The morning sun had barely risen above the glittering skyline when a single desperate cry shattered the silence inside one of the city's most luxurious charity halls. Hundreds of wealthy guests turned their heads at once as an aging billionaire, known for his calm and commanding presence, suddenly pointed toward a young woman standing near the exit. His face had turned pale, his hands trembled uncontrollably, and tears filled eyes that had not cried in decades. His voice echoed through the grand ballroom with a pain no amount of money could hide. "That pendant is my son's." In that unforgettable moment, conversation stopped, music faded into silence, and every person present felt that they were witnessing the beginning of a story far greater than anyone could have imagined. Before we continue, if you believe kindness is never a weakness and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this emotional story with your loved ones, and subscribe to Heart of Hope. Your support helps us continue bringing heartfelt stories that inspire millions around the world. The young woman standing at the center of everyone's attention was named Mireya Collins. She was only 28 years old and worked 2 jobs just to provide for her little nephew after losing her older sister in a tragic accident 3 years earlier. Life had never offered her luxury, but it had given her something far more valuable, a heart that refused to stop caring even after endless disappointments. Around her neck hung an old silver pendant she had worn every single day since childhood. The pendant contained a tiny faded photograph that no longer showed clear faces because time had slowly erased them. She had always believed it was the only memory left by the woman who had raised her in an orphanage before passing away. She never imagined that the simple necklace would one day change the lives of countless people. Across the hall stood billionaire industrialist Roland Ashcroft, a man admired by newspapers for his business empire but secretly haunted by a tragedy that had stolen his happiness decades earlier. 30 years before, during a crowded city festival, his little boy had disappeared without a trace. Thousands of police officers searched, television stations broadcast the child's picture, and investigators followed every possible lead. Months became years, and eventually everyone accepted that the child would never be found. Everyone except Roland. Every birthday, every holiday, and every sunrise reminded him that somewhere in the world his son had vanished without an answer. The silver pendant had been custom-made for his little boy. Inside were 2 tiny photographs and a delicate engraving hidden beneath the frame that only Roland and his late wife knew existed. Seeing that pendant around the neck of a complete stranger made his carefully built emotional walls collapse in seconds. He walked toward Mireya with slow but determined steps while the guests silently watched. Security guards instinctively moved closer, believing something was wrong, but Roland gently stopped them with a single gesture. His eyes remained fixed on the necklace as memories flooded back like an unstoppable river. The bright smile of his child, tiny footsteps across marble floors, bedtime stories, birthday cakes, and promises he had failed to keep all returned in painful clarity. Mireya, confused by the sudden attention, carefully removed the pendant from around her neck. She explained that it had belonged to the elderly caretaker who had raised several abandoned children in a small countryside orphanage. Before her death, the woman had placed the pendant into Mireya's hands and simply whispered that one day the necklace would find its way home. At the time, Mireya thought those words were nothing more than the comforting imagination of an old woman nearing the end of her life. Standing inside that luxurious hall, she suddenly wondered whether those mysterious words had carried a hidden truth all along. Roland carefully opened the pendant with trembling fingers. Beneath the faded photograph, almost invisible after decades of wear, he found the tiny engraved initials that only his family knew about. His knees weakened instantly. Tears rolled freely down his face as years of unanswered questions crashed into a single overwhelming moment. The room remained completely silent because everyone understood they were witnessing something priceless, hope returning after 30 impossible years. But the greatest surprise had not yet arrived. Instead of celebrating, Roland quietly asked Mireya where she had grown up. Her answer opened an entirely new chapter. She had spent her childhood in the same rural orphanage that had taken in abandoned children from different parts of the country. She remembered another older boy who had lived there years before her arrival. The caretakers rarely mentioned him, but they always said he left the orphanage suddenly after being adopted by a traveling family that moved overseas. No one knew his real identity because he had arrived with no official documents. Those words ignited a new mission. Within days, investigators reopened forgotten records that had gathered dust for decades. Old hospital files, orphanage journals, handwritten letters, and faded photographs were carefully examined. Volunteers, journalists, retired police officers, and ordinary citizens joined together to solve a mystery that had survived an entire generation. The story spread across television channels and social media, touching hearts everywhere because it reminded people that hope sometimes survives longer than anyone expects. Meanwhile, Mireia returned to her ordinary life. She continued serving breakfast at a neighborhood cafe every morning before spending afternoons caring for her energetic nephew, Kellen. Despite the sudden media attention, she refused expensive interviews and financial offers. She believed that kindness should never become a business. Her humility impressed Roland more than any business achievement ever could. As weeks passed, Roland quietly began visiting the cafe. Not as a billionaire surrounded by assistants, but simply as an elderly man enjoying coffee while observing the young woman whose honesty had unexpectedly restored his faith in humanity. He noticed how she secretly paid for meals when elderly customers couldn't afford breakfast. He watched her comfort lonely children with warm smiles and gentle words. She never realized anyone was watching because kindness had become part of who she was rather than something she performed for recognition. One afternoon the investigators finally uncovered an astonishing discovery hidden inside forgotten adoption records stored in an old courthouse basement. The unidentified boy from the orphanage had carried a distinctive birthmark identical to the one described in Roland's original missing child report. Even more incredible, fingerprints preserved from a childhood medical examination matched modern government records belonging to a quiet schoolteacher living in another country under the name Elias Rowan. The news spread like wildfire. Roland traveled immediately, carrying nothing except the silver pendant and decades of unanswered love. When he finally stood face to face with Elias, neither man recognized the other at first. Time had changed every feature except their eyes. The schoolteacher had grown into a humble man devoted to educating disadvantaged children. He remembered almost nothing from early childhood except flashes of a grand house, a loving mother, and a silver necklace that disappeared shortly after arriving at the orphanage. Scientific testing confirmed what every heart already suspected. Elias Rowan was indeed Roland Ashcroft's long-lost son. The reunion became one of the most emotional moments anyone present had ever witnessed. No words could truly describe 3 decades of pain finally giving way to overwhelming joy. Father and son embraced beneath the afternoon sunlight while photographers quietly lowered their cameras, realizing that some moments deserved respect more than headlines. Yet what happened afterward left everyone truly speechless. Instead of returning immediately to his father's luxurious world, Elias made an unexpected request. He wanted the enormous reward money that Roland had promised years earlier to be used for something entirely different. He asked that it fund orphanages, scholarships, family reunification programs, and counseling centers for children separated from their parents. He explained that while he had eventually found his family, thousands of children were still waiting for miracles that might never come without help. Roland agreed without hesitation. Together with Mireia, whose pendant had reunited their family, they established the Hope Bridge Foundation. Within a few years, abandoned orphanages were transformed into beautiful homes filled with education, healthcare, and opportunities. Thousands of children found loving families. Missing person investigations received renewed funding. Volunteers across the country joined the mission because one ordinary pendant had reminded everyone that compassion can rewrite even the saddest stories. Mireia never asked for fame, wealth, or recognition. Roland insisted she become one of the foundation's directors, not because she had discovered the truth, but because her quiet compassion had inspired everyone around her. She accepted only on one condition, that every child entering the foundation would be treated not as a number or a case file, but as someone's precious son or daughter waiting to be loved. Years later, visitors entering the foundation headquarters always paused before a glass display near the entrance. Inside rested the same old silver pendant that had once seemed worthless. Beside it stood a simple inscription that touched every heart: hope never loses its way. Sometimes it only takes longer to come home. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that miracles are still possible through kindness, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Heart of Hope so we can continue sharing emotional stories that inspire compassion and second chances. Special request: comment below with "Hope always finds a way, red heart," if you believe no family should ever lose hope, no matter how many years have passed. As the golden afternoon sunlight poured through the foundation's windows, children laughed freely in the gardens where sadness had once lived. Roland finally found peace, Elias discovered the family he never knew he had lost, and Mireia proved that even the smallest act of kindness can echo across generations. The pendant was never just a piece of silver. It became a symbol that love can survive time, truth can overcome silence, and hope, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way back home.